All right, Ecclesiastes chapter 2. If you may remember, last week we were looking at chapter 1. The preacher, probably Solomon, he had been searching for the meaning of life and wisdom. Maybe disillusioned by that, or maybe moving to another course. When those things didn't work out, he opens up chapter 2 with this idea of embracing, you could say, all the worldly pleasures that are out there. Mick was talking about, taking advantage of life while we have it, because we never know when this life is going to be over. But that's always in light of who's in charge. We know that we're not in charge of our own life. We're not in charge of what things are going on in this life. But we know who's in charge and in control of all things, and that's God. But here in chapter 2, I want us to look at why does he try these things but not find enjoyment or true joy in these things. Let's look at verse 1. He says, I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure, so enjoy yourself. And behold, it too was futility. Now that word for futility there in the Hebrew is the same word for vanity. He just decided to use a different word, but it's the same thing. It's that emptiness. It's difficult to know what is in his mind as he approaches this point in his journey. But it does suggest that he's not simply launching himself into any kind of debauchery, but it's like a controlled experiment, I think, based on this legitimate philosophical system that he's got going on. But however this is true, he is entering an area of human experience where self-control is difficult to maintain. But he's going to try by testing himself with pleasure. What do you think he's testing himself for? In what way is he testing? What is he looking for? Look at verse 2. I said of laughter, it is madness. And of pleasure, what does it accomplish? And he goes on and on all these different things he does. What is he striving for? What is he looking for in these things? Fulfillment? The meaning of life? Yeah. Yep. Looking at verse 2, and look with verse 1 in light of this, I said of laughter, it is madness. Now, how can that be? How could laughter ever not be a good thing? Who doesn't like to laugh, to be happy, to have that kind of joy? The illustration I was going to use that Jody answered that question for was of my son Jonah. I remember a couple of years back, we were playing through the very first game, The Legend of Zelda. And they had never played it, and they were going through, and we were taking turns fighting the last boss of Ganon. You guys know that game? Anybody know the Zelda game, Ganon? And I remember Jonah finally, he beat the boss. He was so excited. He began to run in circles with so much joy. And I asked him this afternoon, I said, how happy are you about that today? He's like, no, not so much. Why not? Where did the joy go? It was fleeting, right? It was there for a moment, but then it's gone. It's like when you buy the brand new car. Oh man, it's the greatest thing. But after a while, it just becomes just a car. The joy is fleeting. It doesn't last. And the same thing, I think, with pleasure and of laughter. And then he says, and of pleasure, what does it accomplish? To what end? Ultimately, how much more do you need? It never ends, does it? You always need more and more. And so there in verse 2, the laughter in the pleasure. And then down in verse 3, he said, I explored with my mind how to stimulate my body with wine, while my mind was guiding me wisely, and how to take hold of folly until I could see what good there is for the sons of men to do under heaven the few years, literally days, of their lives. So he wants to explore with his mind how to stimulate the body with wine, but he is going to control his mind, by looking. What good is this? What use do I get from this? Why Why do people do this? Why do they get drunk? What do you think he discovered? I mean, why do people do that? What do you think? Why do people inebriate themselves to such a point they can't think straight? Why do they do that? Huh? To forget about bad things? Yep. Okay, some of those bad things might be someone they lost. Maybe they don't like their life, or they don't like their job. They don't have joy in their life, so they drink themselves silly each night just to forget about those things. And he's exploring. So why do they do this? To what end? To what good of it? And he goes on. And he says, and how to take hold of folly. What is folly? Okay, to foolishness, to act foolishly, until I could see what good there is for the sons of men to do under heaven the few days, years of their lives. He's looking for something like life. Well, the enjoyment of life, perhaps, or all those things maybe put together. He's looking to see why are we here? What is our purpose? He goes on there in verse 4, 5, and 6. I enlarged my works. I built houses for myself. I planted vineyards for myself. I made gardens and parks for myself, and I planted in them all kinds of fruit trees. I made ponds of water for myself from which to irrigate a forest of growing trees. So when I look through that, I think of this is the environment that we live in. If you buy a house, or actually, let me step back. Why? Why do you buy a house? I owned a house once, and then I sold it so we could move up here. And I'll be honest with you, I regret selling the house. I miss owning my own house. There's just something about owning your own home. Maybe it's so that I can replace my air conditioning. I don't know. But it's just something about that. What is it about owning a home that we enjoy so much? Huh? Yeah, you take pride in it. Yeah. Take pride in it. What else? You've accomplished something. Yes, because in our society, having the house with a white picket fence and a nice manicured lawn, a good growing garden, right, Larry? Maybe a tree you overwater and kill, or Bob, George, whatever his name. I can't remember his name. George, called by Apple Tree George. It died. All those things. You take pride in it, but to what end? Did Solomon have all these things that he mentions here? Vineyards, oh, he did. Gardens and parks and trees, ponds irrigate a forest of them. That's fantastic. Those are great things. But to what end? But he goes on. This doesn't end. He's still building up all the things he did for himself there in verses 7 and 8. I bought male and female slaves, and I had home-born slaves. Also, I possessed flocks and herds larger than all who preceded me in Jerusalem. Also, I collected for myself silver and gold and the treasure of kings and provinces. I provided for myself male and female singers and the pleasures of men, many concubines. Oh, man, he had so much. Would you say he had everything in the world a man could possibly want? Yes, absolutely. One of my favorite stories, I've mentioned it several times, is the guy who created the game Minecraft. Such a simple game. My kids love it. They like to play it. I've messed around with it a little bit. Simple game. And he made that from his basement. He hired people, and after some time it became popular, and Microsoft bought that game from him. You guys remember how much? $2.5 billion. And that guy was, I think it was in his 20s, maybe early 30s when he sold it to them. And it wasn't too long after that, he wrote a book, and he regretted selling it. Why do you think that was? Purpose. Lost his purpose. But even if he still had it, to what end? We were talking about that a little bit with the pew packers. One day he's going to grow old. He's going to have to give it to somebody else. And are they going to do with it the same things he had envisioned for it? No. They're going to do something different. They'll do something different with it. It won't be what he was thinking, what he wanted to do with it. And Solomon is going to mention that here in just a little bit, as he goes on there in verses 10 and 11. All that my eyes desired, I did not refuse them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure, for my heart was pleased because of all my labor, and this was my reward for all my labor. So when he says that right there at the very end, for my heart was pleased because of all my labor, and this was my reward for all my labor. And that is the joy of accomplishing something, the joy of obtaining that one goal. As we've already saw and mentioned, how long do those things last? As far as the joy or the fulfillment the things of this world will give you. I mean, we've even mentioned before of those who have lots and lots of money. Not everyone's this way, but how much is enough? It's never enough. Or you start a business, then they start another business. I know people who just, they're very good and talented at starting a business, but once they sell one, then they go and they start another one. Then they get bored with that, they sell it, and then they go start another one because they're bored. It's not fulfilling. Or those who seek to find the answers by drinking alcohol or taking drugs. How much is enough to take care of those problems for them? They always need more. Or they go from this drug and then they go to another one stronger and it's stronger. They keep taking it because it's never going to fill the gap or the hole that's in their life. Maybe they turn to food. Maybe they turn to online pornography. Or they turn to all these things the world has to offer. And does it ever fulfill the hole that's in their life? It doesn't. And so he says there in verse 11, thus I considered all my activities which my hands had done, and the labor which I had exerted, and behold, all was vanity, and striving after wind, and there was no profit under the sun. No profit under the sun. Gained nothing. That word profit, think of it like an accounting sheet. And that section for gain, nothing. To what end? And he's going to comment on that here in just a little bit as well, about in the end, he's going to give it over to somebody else. What are we striving for? Some of us are in elementary school, right? Caleb, Josh, and Jonah, and Jody. Some are in high school, college. What's your purpose? What are you striving for? Is it wrong to strive for anything? No. Is it wrong to want any kind of pleasure in life? No. No, not at all. So what is the preacher, Solomon, getting at in this chapter? In several of these chapters, what is he getting at? Why does he say this? Is it because he makes it sound like having pleasure or being happy and laughter, what good is it? He calls it vain.
I think it may be like the term hate in the New Testament, where we talk about hate and we say it really doesn't mean hate, it means loving less.
Oh, right. The way, like,
in this case, it may be that it's not totally bad, but there's something better.
Yes, I think you're right. Nothing wrong with it, but if that becomes your sole focus of that genuine joy, what good is it? Because even that joy is limited. It won't last. And even if you're already able to gather all these things he talks about, you're going to die. And so he gets to verses 12 and following next. He says, so I turn to consider wisdom, madness, and folly. For what will the man do who will come after the king except what has already been done? And I saw that wisdom excels folly as light excels darkness. The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. And yet I know that one fate befalls them both. Then I said to myself, as is the fate of the fool, it will also befall me. Why then have I been extremely wise? So I said to myself, this too is vanity. For there is no lasting remembrance of the wise man as with the fool, inasmuch as in the coming days all will be forgotten, and how the wise man and the fool alike die. So I hated life, for the work which had been done under the sun was grievous to me, because everything is futility and striving after wind. So he recognized the wise man excelled the foolish man, but then he said, but there's one thing that's going to befall them both. Death. The fool's going to die. I'm going to die. I'm the king. And if it's Solomon, as we were thinking, who is wiser than Solomon? Nobody. So when he dies and he has to give his kingdom over to someone else, are they going to do just as well with it as he did? Yeah, we know the truth. No way. And he knows it. So he's looking at all this that he's done in his life, and he's like, what's going to happen with it? What's going to happen with all these things I've done? I'm going to give it over to this person, and they're going to ruin it. Vanity of vanities. What am I striving for? How does God, and believing in God, fix that? I want my high school students and college students to answer that question. How does believing or following in God fix that? Any thoughts? Oh, I know it's hard to be put on the spot. Doesn't this happen at school also? Surely you're used to it. So you have all these things in life, right? We know as Christians that, value is not found in this life. It's found in the next. But we know that there is pleasure in life. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with attaining riches in this life. As long as what? Correct. As long as it doesn't override God. You keep your mind and your heart focused on Him. Because, as we mentioned, the joys in life, they're fleeting. Once you do something, you've done it. And what else is there left to accomplish? I remember when I was in the Army, and I got news. I was in Belvoir, Virginia, just outside of D.C., training, and we got our orders of where we're going to get stationed. And I got picked for Hawaii. And oh man, everybody was excited. My family was like, you're going to go live in Hawaii? That's great. I was like, well, I guess so. Yeah, I'll be good. So I get to the island of Oahu. I'm going to live on the island of Hawaii. Wow. 3 years. I made it about 2 months before I was ready to get off the island. Why do you think that would be?
Tourists.
Oh, yeah. Okay, tourist. Well, but that wasn't it for me, but I could see that. I was trapped. I had done everything you could do on that island because we were all excited. So when we got there, we were doing everything. I did everything in those 2 months. And we did everything. I was in my 20s. We did everything. And I know that island like the back of my hand still today. Even after, I think it was years after, I think it was 2010, I took Jenny there and showed her all over the island. We knew everything. Remembered all of it. It's just so much, there's only so much you can do in this life. But you can't, and again, you can't take it with you. Solomon saw that. Just as the fool dies, so will the wise. So believing in God does something, doesn't it? What does it do? How does that change your perspective? Young folks. Surprise, the answer doesn't just pop out. I feel like we've mentioned this so many times over the years. So that question's back to you, high schoolers. How does believing in God change things? Come on, it's got to be something.
But it's an everlasting goal. Like, you may have goals in your life, like achieve all A's, blah, 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 but after you're done with school, then there's really, that goal is kind of finished. But God, like, going to heaven is an everlasting goal. So, like, believing in God is kind of like, I don't know, you always have a goal to lean back on, I guess.
I like that. The everlasting goal. That's got a ring to it. See, yeah, you're recognizing that that's eternity. And when you get to heaven, all the problems and issues go away. Do you need to eat in heaven? Do you need to drink water? Make sure you get plenty of water, hydrate, maybe take your electrolytes. Do you get cramps in heaven? Injuries? Do you have to get a study for a test in heaven? Well, that'd be terrible. Every week, okay, taking a test. If you fail, you might get kicked out. No, none of that. You're there. It's eternal. There's no bedtime. There's no eating. There's none of all that is unnecessary. It's eternal. And we know that's going to be eternal joy in there. How do we explain that? I don't know how you put that into words. But that's the life, true, genuine life God is offering us. An eternal life where all the problems of this world goes away. Here, we die. Here, we have to strive for the basic necessities of life every day. And as Mick was saying, every day, we don't know. This could be the last. This could be the last day. We don't know. So we're left with so many questions. We're left with so many problems and issues. And we were talking about this again last week. The philosophers always, they have those questions and they kind of go mad with all the questions that can't be answered. And here's Solomon going through all these things and he's trying to figure out purpose through this wisdom. Does he find it? He's not finding it in all these things. The futility of life, vanity of any, striving after the wind. That's impossible. There's only one thing that matters as he brings it to an end, the very end of Ecclesiastes. That's the point. It's to get us to focus on what's more important. So why? Why do we try to do good? Why are you here on Wednesday nights? Why do you come on Sundays? Why do you do all that you do? Why do you go to school? Why do you get up? Why do you eat breakfast? Why do you brush your teeth? Why are you kind to your neighbors and help them with their trash? Or why are you kind to those in the church or kind to those at school? Why do you do anything in life? There is only one answer that answers all those questions. And you should know it. I know you do. But if it doesn't pop in your mind right away, you need to get it there. There's one reason why you do anything. What is it? Adults?
Well, I'm not sure God cares about my teeth. The answer is doing God's will.
Okay, doing God's will. What's that? To please God. You do it all for Him. Everything I do, for Him. Everything I do is in light of Him. I take care of myself for Him because of all the blessings He's giving me. I want to make sure I'm in the whatever best shape and health I can possibly be so that while I'm here, I can continue to preach and teach and reach those who are lost and dying in this world. That's my goal. Whatever I do it with an idea of knowing and remembering my purpose here. Remember when we looked at 1 Corinthians 13? And we looked at that idea of love, the agape love, and you can see agape love being used in the opening of that chapter. If I gave all my possessions to the poor and I gave myself to die, yet if I don't have love, what? But isn't giving your possessions to the poor putting the needs of others ahead of your own? Well, it is, but he's saying there's more to it. Why are you doing it? Just like with wisdom. That's a good thing. Happiness and laughter and joy, those are good things. A lot of things he mentioned are good, but why? Why are you doing the things you do? If God is not the center of your life, vanity of vanities. We need to get that in our minds and make that our purpose of waking up and going to bed every single day. And when we have that, each day that we have is a blessing, and whatever happens, good or bad, won't matter as much because we will recognize who's in control. And that starts on the level of our mind, doesn't it? That's the truth of it. That's what God wants for us. That's what I think the writer of Ecclesiastes is trying to get his readers to see. And it's something we need to take into our minds and our hearts, because we are living in a world that has lost its way. There is no joy in anything. And they think that if one, and I'm not taking any groups out there right now, if you don't think their way completely, they don't want anything to do with you. But that's not what we ought to be doing. What's the only purpose? Please God, serve God, follow his commandments. If everyone did that, division, strife, all that would go away. And a real purpose would rise. I think that's why this country was so successful in the beginning. We were a God-focused country. That has gone away. And now we're a divided country. And if you're not on my side, it doesn't matter what you say or think. We have no anything together. It's sad. How can we help people see that truth? Living the right life and being a light and being salt to this world, lost, dying world.